Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Sermon, and I am thrilled to have you here with us on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This show is for those who want to learn more about creating financial wellness, and we're going to take different life cycles and we're going to explore them both financially and emotionally, because personal finances are usually not about the money, rather about the emotions associated with your finances. The healthier we are emotionally, the better financial decisions we tend to make. Although we may be fairly general in our discussion, we would love to hear from you, make it more relevant and more personal. So please do reach out to me through my website, that is lifecycle.financial. Again, lifecycle.financial. Or you can post your comments and questions on Facebook, YouTube, or any of the other platforms that you are listening to us on. Stress is part of our lives. Every day we get stressed. We wake up knowing it's going to welcome us to a new day. Or maybe if you're going through a particularly stressful life cycle, you may not have slept last night, but who was your companion? Probably the stress of that life cycle. Now, I'm not saying that every minute of every day is filled with stress. However, research does show that we do not perform at our best, often very far from our best when we are stressed. It can have negative impacts on our health, on our cognitive processing, on our decision making, and reducing or alleviating our stress can help in so many ways, emotionally, on our health, on our finances. Today's guest is going to help us learn more about managing stress in a somewhat unique manner and answer if the age-old adage is true: is laughter truly the best medicine? Debbie Friend is the founder of Life Currents. Debbie has a master's of science in exercise physiology and cardiac rehabilitation, is an intrinsic coach, a laughter yoga leader, which we will explore in the middle of our show, a personal trainer, and more. Debbie, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on with us.
Well, Hirsch, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, people have heard of a coach, they've heard of a personal trainer, they've heard of a yoga leader, right? A laughter yoga leader is probably something people are less familiar with, if at all. Can you share a little bit more? And we'll get to kind of the laughter and the yoga, but I'd like to get a little bit of an intro of you and how did you kind of get to this point? What is the passion behind what you do and why you do it?
Absolutely. I've been laughing my whole life, not by choice. A lot of it probably out of nervousness because I was very shy and quiet growing up. So when people would talk to me, instead of answering, I'd be like, Then as I got older, life got a lot harder and I started to go through a number of very trying circumstances. At one point in my life, I was in a very bad marriage, was starting to go through the divorce process. It was an abusive marriage. I was going through counseling. At the same time, my father and my mother were both diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and my father was in the final stages of his life. When he finally passed away, and I was dealing with all of these things, I was looking for a way of how can I still feel like I was human, except for experience all of the negative emotions. What could I do to make myself feel better? I came across a laughter yoga class, which I found very strange because I was doing hatha yoga at the time. And I was wondering if I'm going to go in there. Am I going to be doing downward dog? Am I going to be giggling? What's going to be happening here? And what I found was that it was laughter exercise combined with breathing techniques. And it taught the body how to laugh without relying on jokes or humor. So here I was at one of the lowest points in my life, just trying to find some positive way to cope and deal with the situation. And what I discovered during this class was that I was able to laugh. And it wasn't because anything was funny or I was happy or I was in a good mood. It was just a new coping strategy. And when I discovered how beneficial this was, I studied and became a laughter yoga leader so that I can help other people who are in similar situations.
It's always funny how life takes us and where we go and how we end up where we do. But I think, sometimes there's a calling, obviously. People call it the universe, whatever it might be. It's always fascinating when I have guests to hear how they get to the point where they are. And before we get to the yoga side of it, I would like to explore the effects of laughter. I mean, the laughter yoga would be pointless without understanding the benefits of including the laughter in the yoga. So there is a saying, as we said earlier, laughter is the best medicine. While it definitely feels good at the moment, even those side-splitting barrel laughs that we sometimes have, what does laughter actually do to improve our health?
Actually, laughter does a number of wonderful things to improve our health. And when you say laughter is the best medicine, think what other thing can you take or do, or a therapy that you can use that's free? It works very fast and it's available whenever you need it. And that's something that laughter can do. Specifically, especially during this time when we have a lot of COVID going around, one thing that regular mirthful laughter does is that it boosts your immune system. So when you laugh heartily and you laugh frequently, it helps increase your immune cells, it raises your T cells, it raises the infection fighting antibodies, and overall increases our resistance to getting sick. Another thing that laughter does is it lowers our blood glucose levels. It also works on our heart and our circulatory system. So it lowers your blood pressure, also reduces your risk of getting heart attacks and strokes. There was a study done by a doctor who was a cardiologist from the University of Maryland. And what he did was he took a group of patients who were cardiac patients and he tested them, and they watched a very stressful movie. And when they were watching the movie, what he found was that the endothelium, which is the inner lining of blood vessels, became very constricted and it didn't allow a lot of blood flow going through. However, when they watched comedy and happy movies and they were laughing, the endothelium relaxed, dilated, and more blood was able to get through. So what this cardiologist was telling his patients, in addition to doing regular exercise, try to laugh 10 to 15 minutes a day because it's definitely going to help your heart. It's also exercise, and I like to tell people as an exercise physiologist, this is going to be the happiest, most fun workout that you are ever going to do. Because if you laugh mirthfully and heartily for like 10 to 15 minutes, you are going to burn calories. Not a lot, okay, it's maybe 40 calories during the session, but when you look at the whole year, you've lost about 4 pounds just by laughing. And when you're laughing heartily, it's an internal jog. It massages your organs. All of your internal organs get massaged. It's a great workout for your heart and lungs. When we're breathing deeply, as in laughter, we have to deeply inhale, and we let it out with this forceful exhalation. That's working your lungs, and it's increasing your heart rate, just as exercise does. So that's how, in the long run, when you laugh heartily, it actually helps stabilize your blood pressure. In addition, when you get a really hearty, good laugh and you're doubled over because your abs are just so sore from the exercise, that's because you're giving your abs a workout. The muscles are contracting and relaxing very rapidly, and it is giving you an abdominal workout. Overall, it also helps alleviate pain. When you're laughing and sometimes something might be really troubling you and you start laughing and all of a sudden you feel good. You forget what you're going through. Another very, very important function of regular laughter is that it eases stress, tension, and anxiety. We have stress hormones that are circulating throughout our body. And as you were saying, when we're very stressed, our cortisol levels go up, our epinephrine goes up. But when we laugh, our brain releases endorphins, which is the body's natural painkillers, and it also releases serotonin, which is our body's natural antidepressant. So as I said earlier, what can you do and what kind of pill can you get? What kind of treatment can you get that's fast, it's free, and you can use it anytime, and it's effective because it works?
So I think you've just created a new generation of practical jokers to encourage themselves to be laughing. But that is fantastic because, it's not something you would imagine that a 30-second laugh, would give somebody. So in actuality, you could almost say comedy clubs are the new studio to work out in because of the laughter. And I say that a little bit, with humor, but at the same time, when people are engaging in it, there's nobody, as you said, you mentioned about anxiety and depression, and the other benefits, I'm sure, take a little longer sometimes, but are there. But there's nobody in the middle of a solid laugh that can turn around and go, I'm upset right now, right? It can change an entire mood immediately, quite honestly. I do remember when, I mean, just to give you an example, when I had started telling some of my friends that I was getting divorced, one of them said, "Oh, this reminds me of that old adage, rather you than me." And in the beginning, I was like a little shocked, but then I burst out laughing, and I went like from this hardcore like internal angst to just the relief of it. So I can, as you're talking, I'm relating it like to things that have happened in my life that were amazing. But you mentioned that laughter helps with anxiety and depression. How is it a good coping mechanism for dealing with tough times and trying times? And we're going to get into the yoga, we're going to get into a lot of it, but how it's a little different, right? How do we use it as a coping mechanism, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Well, first of all, people who laugh regularly don't worry as much as people who don't laugh. So, right there, taking the fact that you're not going to worry about the situation as much because you have this built in mechanism to help deal with it. And one thing that laughter does, it does stop distressing emotions. You can't feel anxious, you can't feel angry, and you can't feel sad while you're laughing. As Virtue just mentioned, when someone said something to you and you're laughing, it just changed your whole perspective of the situation. And one study showed that people who had a very strong sense of humor actually live longer than people who don't. So, how do people use laughter as a coping mechanism when they're in the middle of a tough situation? Well, one of the main goals of finding humor in a situation is to create distance between what you're going through and yourself. And in that distance, you get a new perspective. One of my favorite quotes is by Wayne Dyer, who said, "If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change." We all go through situations that we can't control. That's beyond our capabilities. But the one thing that we can control in the situation is that we always have a choice in how we're going to either respond or are we going to react. And choosing to look at a situation from a humorous perspective is always a choice. Might not be something people are used to doing, or they might not feel comfortable, or they haven't done it in the past. But just know that if you change your perspective and you take a step back and look at what you're going through, whether it's going through a divorce, whether it's going through the court proceedings, whatever it is, there really is humor in every situation.
Right.
And sometimes it's very difficult to see it, and you might not be able to do it in the moment. And sometimes we go through a situation. Have you ever thought of something that you're going through and it was so troubling and so disturbing? You said, 5 years from now, I'm really going to find this funny and I'm going to laugh about it. Well, 5 years from now, you're not going to need that laugh, but you are going to need it right now as a way to help you get through whatever it is you're going through. One thing you could do is you can look at the absurdity of what's going on and just say, why is this happening to me? Or you can say, why have all these things happening to me right now? I don't understand. But if you put a little twist onto it and lighten it up a little, you will see that you can get through it. A lot of times we tend to catastrophize what we're going through and make it that it's the worst thing in the world. I can't believe that this is happening. But again, if you look at it from a scale and rate it on a scale from 0 to 10, with how bad, how stressful is this really? Most of the time, we can find that, you know what, it's bad, but it's not the worst thing in the world. I've been through worse. I've been able to get through it. I can get through this situation as well. And if you can laugh at whatever you're going through, it lessens your anxiety about what you're dealing with. So if some people say, but you know what I'm dealing with is just so horrible, I just can't find the humor in this at all. It's just not funny. And what you could do at that moment is shift your focus. So maybe what you're dealing with, you can't laugh at, but there are other things that you can find that are humorous to bring that into your life. It can be watching a funny movie. It can be reading an article. It can be sharing some time with a friend who always makes you laugh. Or even going back into the past and thinking of something that made you really happy in the past and laughing about that. So there are ways of, when you're in the moment, finding what I'm going to say a healthy coping mechanism. And
Right.
that's what this is. It's how can you get through what you're going through, because you're in the middle of a situation, no, might not want to be there. A lot of us find ourselves in the middle of something, and when you spend all your time focusing on poor me and why is this happening and I didn't ask for this and this isn't what I want, you still have to get through it. So if you can shift your focus and say, you know what, yeah, this is happening, I don't like it, but I'm going to deal with it.
You know, when I was going through my divorce, I was going through the support group, and I remember somebody saying to me, I need the 15-second rule. And I'm like, what is this 15-second rule? And basically he said kind of what you're saying. It doesn't help to dwell on the negative of what's going on right now, right? He said to me, his rule is for 15 seconds you can, and then you got to move on. You've got to give the situation the right kind of reverence of where you are, but don't dwell in it and don't get lost in it. You know, we said it's easy in good times to laugh, and you know, let's face it, the last few years people have been pretty stress filled, and they've definitely had their challenges. And I think having that, as you say, your perspective becomes a very big piece of this. You know, the very first blog I ever wrote, which was probably about 14 or 2015, I don't remember. It was called "Divorce is Awesome," right? And people didn't really like the title, and I changed the title to "Perspective is Everything," and it really is. You know, it ended up really what I had said was I had this, like, my life was dying as I knew it, which was true in some ways, but it also creates opportunities. And again, you can dwell on, is my life dying in this way, or you can focus on how am I going to live my life and how's it going to change, which I think becomes a very different approach to how am I going to live my life and be a little bit more deliberate in it, as opposed to, as we said, dwell in this, the pain or the stress or whatever it is, and let that take over our lives.
I agree with you. You have to honor whatever situation you're going through. You can't brush over it and say, this is nothing, it's a walk in the park. It is difficult. That's the bottom line. It is difficult. But what do you want at the end of the day? As an intrinsic coach, I often ask my clients, what is it you're wanting for yourself? So when this is all over or going through the process, if there's children involved, they're watching your every move. They're seeing how you react and how you respond. It's also teaching them skills on how to handle things as they grow up. And life isn't always perfect. That's the bottom line. Another favorite quote of mine is, life's not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. We're all going to go through things. And I also say that this isn't happening to you. It's happening for you. What
Right.
can you gain out of the situation? What are you going to come out of this? How are you going to come out of this better, more improved? What can you do along the way, again, so that your children can grow up with healthy habits? They're going to face a lot of things as they're dealing with life. What are you teaching them based on your example? And one great thing is to say, you know what, this is really hard. I understand that. But how am I going to get through this in the best possible way for me? People have a number of different ways to cope. I'm saying that laughter is just a healthy option. Not that you're going to do it all the time. Not that you're going to go through every experience. This is happening. It's no big deal. Life's a party. It's not. It just gives you a new perspective. I can share a story of what happened to me in March. In 1 week's time, I went through a little health crisis last year, very stressful time, and I know that it was all the stress that I was going through put me in that situation.
Right.
And I got a call one morning from my doctor who said, I got test results back and they weren't exactly what we were looking for, so I want to schedule another procedure. While I'm talking to the nurse, I see a call coming in from one of my relatives, and I'm thinking, this is very strange. Why is he calling me?
Right.
I get off the phone and he says, I'm calling to offer my condolences that my sister passed away. Now, I didn't know my sister passed away because my immediate family didn't get that message to me. So here I'm dealing with, I got this medical procedure. My sister passed away. I'm calling my brother and other relatives to find out exactly what had happened. So this is on a Friday. On Sunday, I went to the grocery store and I'm trying to get a bottle of Pepsi off the shelf for my daughter. The bottle's jammed in there and I'm trying to get it out and get it off. The bottle flips over, falls onto my hand. I wound up breaking my hand. At the jewel of that day. So then on Tuesday, I have the funeral for my sister. On Wednesday, my hand is like so swollen and bruised and black and blue. I now find out it's broken, have a cast put on. I do competitive ballroom dancing. That Friday, I had a competition to do. And on Sunday, my daughter developed COVID. So let's talk about all the major stressors that are happening in 1 week's time. And I had a choice. I can either look at the situation and say, wow, it doesn't get any worse than this. What's happening in my life? I can't believe that this is going. Why is this happening to me? Why is this going on all at once? And instead, I chose to just stay in the moment and deal with everything that was happening as they were coming up and trying to put things in perspective. And about 2 weeks later, I was able to actually laugh. Can you believe this is all that happened in 1 week's time? I can't believe it. Not only did this, but I'm walking around with a broken hand and I'm dancing with a broken hand. And people are coming up to me at the competition. Wow, you're such a badass. And I'm dealing with my daughter. So yeah, it was hard. It was traumatic. But yes, if you change your perspective, because ultimately I didn't want to get sick and I didn't want to go down and get into this deep depression. So how can I deal with the situation, giving myself the best possible outcome?
I like that. And I actually have a friend who's a life coach, and he often will say, you've survived 100% of your worst days. And when you think about that, right? Oh, another, you've got two columns, the good day, the bad day, right? Oh, another one for the bad day. Like if you can have the levity of that, I think it can help you go a long way. And knowing you're going to get through it, just like 100% of the other bad days that you have, brings a very different perspective. And before we get into another topic, because I have many, we do have to take a break. But I'm going to ask, how can people get in touch with you and learn more about what you do?
I think the easiest way is to go to my website. It's lifecurrents.net. It's up on the screen. Or you can email me at debbie@lifecurrents.net.
All right, great. We will be right back in 2 minutes. And Debbie, thank you. Hold on, everybody. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. And I'm excited to have Debbie Friend here from Life Currents. And you can reach her on her website, lifecurrents.net. I do want to cover some of the stuff that we've already gone through, which is a lot. The question that we are answering is medicine the best? Sorry, is laughter the best medicine? And you shared a little bit about your background. One of the things I did like, and through other discussions that we've had, that you shared is how kind of deliberate you were in coming out happy and healthy, which is a hard one for people going through a stressful time. Sometimes they can't think beyond what am I having for lunch, if I can even tolerate lunch, let alone 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road, what their life wants to look like. And I think that is an inspiring thing for people to remember, that as they go through difficult situations, it does sometimes create opportunities for them to be able to do that. You spoke a lot about how laughter improves our health and reduces anxiety and opens up the blood flow so that it can reach all of our organs, which we obviously need because it gets rid of all the negative stuff in our body. It brings all the air, oxygen, positive things, and our ability to process things, our mental cognitive ability improves. And I know there's probably about 8 or 10 other things that you spoke about that I could not get down as we did, but I know depression, anxiety, a good coping mechanism for trying times were all in there as well. You spoke about how it boosts our immune system, that people worry less. All of those, I think, are things that people really, really want within their lives. And I like the idea of the way you described how you can bring perspective and be able to think, 5 years from now, I'm going to laugh at this, but 5 years from now, I don't need to laugh. It's now that I need to, and bringing that in as well. And that actually brings up a question that I have, which is, we kind of have created, or I don't know, you and me, but in general, society is a little bit of a on-demand society, right? We have HBO on demand. We have skip intro, which I have to admit I actually like a lot, when you're watching a movie. How receptive are people to this? It sounds like, and again, I'm coming from somebody who's not as familiar as you, but it almost sounds like it could be forced or feel awkward to laugh on demand, right? How do you get people comfortable with this?
Well, actually, when you're not happy and you're not in a good mood and you don't have a sense of humor, it is forced and it is on demand. Do you want me to get into laughter yoga right now?
That is actually probably the very next question I was going to ask you. So why don't we combine that? Because you do teach laughter yoga. We spoke earlier, on the show and before that, this is not exactly the top of mind when people are thinking of yoga. So I'm going to ask you to explain it. And, like you said earlier, your question coming into this was, are we going to go in the tree pose and giggle? Or are we going to, what are we going to do? How does it work? And how do you get people comfortable with it?
Okay. I didn't create laughter yoga. People often look at me and they say, is this something you made up? And no, it started in India in 1995 by a doctor. His name was Dr. Madan Kataria, and he was looking for ways of alleviating stress of living in Mumbai. And he researched, is laughter really the best medicine? Came upon a story about Norman Cousins. I don't know if you're familiar with Norman Cousins. He wrote the book Anatomy of an Illness. Okay. And he researched positive and negative emotions, had gone on a business trip overseas. When he left, he was perfectly healthy and fine. While he was there, he was completely stressed out, came home, wasn't feeling well, got progressively worse, wound up in the hospital, was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis, which was a progressive disease. In his case, the prognosis was extremely poor. His doctor told him, get your life in order. You only have a few months left to live. But Norman Cousins, who researched all this, knew that all the negative things that he had went through prior caused him to get sick. That's why they call it disease. It's disruption of the ease in your body. And he felt that because all this negativity had caused him to get sick, he was going to use positive emotions to get himself better. With the approval of his doctor, he checked himself out of the hospital because there was nothing that was working. The medications weren't alleviating any of his pain. He wasn't able to sleep. He checked himself into a hotel across the street, Again, this was all with his doctor's blessings. He did this. He put himself on massive doses of vitamin C because he felt that with his condition, vitamin C needed to be replenished in his system. I say that 3 times fast. And what he did was he was watching Marx Brothers movies. He brought in an old film projector because this is how back it was,
Right.
and slapstick comedy and the Three Stooges. And what he found was that when he laughed heartily for 15 minutes or so, he was able to sleep pain-free for 2 hours. So he kept replicating this over and over and over until he was finally pain-free. His symptoms started to go away. His blood levels stabilized and normalized, and he knew that this was something that was beneficial. So Dr. Kataria in India was looking for ways to test out, well, is laughter really the best medicine? And he gathered a group together in a park with 5 people, and he had them tell jokes. The first week, the jokes were funny, and everybody laughed, and everybody enjoyed it. And the second week, they already knew the punchline, so the jokes weren't that funny anymore. And then by the third week, some of the women started to feel that the jokes were very sexist. But what he found was that the laughter was contagious. So when one person started laughing, other people were laughing, even if they didn't find anything funny at all.
Right.
And his wife was a yoga instructor, and she says you have to add breathing techniques. So this is how it actually got the name of laughter yoga. It's laughter exercise combined with gentle breathing techniques, which in yoga is the pranayama or the breathing. And this teaches the body how to laugh without relying on jokes or humor. So in laughter yoga, we have an expression, you fake it till you make it, and the motion creates the emotion. But when you look at laughter yoga, you can say it's a relatively new concept in body-mind exercise. Not mind-body, but body-mind, where the body creates the activity. So you laughing and nothing's funny. It's simulated laughter. Interestingly, your brain does not know the difference between fake laughter and genuine laughter. And so it can start out as fake, but over time, when you're laughing at a group with people, because laughter is contagious, then it becomes natural and real. So yes, it does start out fake, but at the end of the session, when people are laughing together, and we go through a number of exercises that they just simulate life experiences. Again, so if you can laugh at anything that you're going through, you find a new way of dealing with it. And for example, we all get credit card statements in the mail, and you have a choice when you open that bill, and you can look at it like, oh my gosh, how am I going to deal with this? Or you can look at the bill. One of the exercises that we could do in a group is look at the bill and you see the numbers and you start laughing at it. And it's like, and then you show it to the next person. Look at mine. Oh no, look at my bill. My bill's bigger than your bill.
See who's got the highest bill. That's very funny.
And again, it doesn't change the situation. It just changes the realization, okay, it's a bill. It's money.
Right.
Somehow this is going to get paid. It's not the end of the world. So that's what laughter yoga does. And when you do it in a group, everybody also gets the same feeling. And because we have what's called mirror neurons in our brain, which causes us to mimic what other people do. For example, if I start yawning, chances are you might feel like you want to start yawning. And because I'm laughing, I see you're smiling now and you're laughing as well. So it's very contagious. And just by putting a smile on your face, a lot of people say, how can I laugh? There's nothing to laugh about. But if you just smile, it actually changes your physiology.
Right.
It's impossible to smile and be angry at the same time. And you could try that.
I'm gonna throw out a little bit of a different version on that credit card bill. I always tell my clients there's a very simple question. It seems like almost like a dumb question. When you're gonna buy something, just say to yourself, for example, for me, is future Hirsch gonna be upset with current Hirsch if I buy this, right? So I'd rather they be laughing when they open that bill at how low it is and that the question works than how high it is. So I did have to just throw that in. I do think that what you're saying though is it's fascinating because there are people, I'm sure, that they probably stress 2 or 3 days before still comes in, as opposed to being able to look at the humor in it as well. So I'm going to also, all right, you're in a studio, you're doing something like this. How do people take this out? How do they successfully utilize this in their everyday lives outside of the studio?
All right, so let me take a step back and describe what's happening in a laughter yoga session. First of all, I start out, because usually they're groups of people that haven't met before. I'll go into a corporation, I'll do this in a school, I'll do this in an organization. Explain what laughter yoga is, the history of it, the benefits of doing laughter. Then I ask people, do you want to laugh? And most often it's like, yeah, I want to laugh. It's like, no, I want to hear a resounding, yes, I want to laugh. And this gets them in the mood, training their body. So when you look at laughter as a form of exercise, it's like any other exercise that we're going to do. You have to warm up, and you do the exercise, and then you cool down. One thing I like to stress about using laughter as an exercise, because as an exercise physiologist, I coach people, exercise aerobically and do strength training and do flexibility, but it's going to take a little time before you're going to start to see results, and you have to be consistent. With this, you're going to feel the effects immediately. People will get into the group and they will start laughing, and they feel good right there in the moment. Another thing that I do, I start out my session, I ask people to take a deep breath, close their eyes, and on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being, I couldn't feel any worse than I do, to 10 being it doesn't get any better, how do they feel? And at the end of the session, no matter what group, wherever people are, they consistently always rate themselves as much higher. They could have come in with a headache, they leave without a headache. They could have come in with very tense muscles, and they leave without it. So when they're in the session, they know that this works and that they feel good. And then looking for ways, how do you replicate this over and over in your life once you leave? Well, there's a number of things that you can do to find more joy and laughter in your life. Let me backtrack a little bit first and say that laughter yoga is not about comedy or humor. It's a form of exercise. And there's a big difference between comedy and laughter yoga.
So, it's funny because we said people are not generally familiar with this approach, and I'm sure you don't say, you're stressed, I'm going to count to 3, and then you do exactly what I say, 1, 2, 3, laugh. Like, there's got to be more to it, right? So that was what was going through my head, right? I think I'm going to ask, so somebody calls you and they're curious about, well, this is something I heard is good. How do you acclimate them to this approach? Because I'm sure they're skeptics with everything, right, that they've never heard of. I'm sure they are skeptics. How do you kind of alleviate that and just kind of, and I'm going to ask you to be relatively brief because we don't have that much time left. And I do want you to also share a couple stories of what you've seen and how people's lives have changed. So if you can start with that, let's go with that.
Okay, very briefly, I can describe it, but until you experience it, you're not going to understand it. So I invite people to come and try a session.
Right.
Because I have a video up on my website. It looks silly, but when you're experiencing it, when you're going through the motions, you feel the benefits. So I'm going to entice people and say, you have to try it to understand how it actually works.
Right. I mean, and everything you say makes 100% sense. It just makes 100%, it resonates because, yes, when you laugh, you don't feel the stress. When, you have those, like when you're in a gym and you're doing crunches and you're not feeling like, oh my God, this is awesome. But when you're laughing and you're feeling that in your gut, in your core, you do feel this is awesome, right? Everything makes total sense in what you're saying. So we've heard, I guess, from the laughter, the benefits, to including it into the yoga, to the exercise. Give a couple stories, if you would. And we've got about 2 minutes just to give you a warning before we got to wrap up. But I think it would be interesting to hear how people have benefited, and it's not any more kind of theoretical, if we can call it that, but actually some stories would be very helpful.
Okay, one that comes to mind, there's a lawyer that's come to several of my sessions, and law is a very stressful profession. And he comes in and he's all tense and wound up. And whenever he leaves at the end of the class, he always feels more centered and more grouped and able to go back and tackle what he was doing before in a new frame of mind. There's another session that I did where I was in a fitness facility and two people walked in and they like gave me this look, I dare you to make me laugh. And they wound up laughing in the class. And at the end, I always ask for people's opinions. And they said, you know what? I came in here and I didn't think you were able to do that. And yet you were. So what I've learned from that is we don't know what anybody's walking around with or what they're dealing with. And what they're showing on the outside might not reflect. So someone who came in looking for some kind of relief was able to find it. Just in this 45 minutes of mirthful laughing for no reason changed their perspective. I did sessions at the Cancer Wellness Center, and there was one lady who was laughing so hard, and I thought, she's probably in remission. Everything's going good in her life. And in actuality, the next day, her cancer had progressed, and she was going for more treatment, and she needed the laughter. So this was her way of getting out the negativity.
I'm sure there are people that in those situations that you've worked with haven't laughed probably in months, if not years, because of their situation. They haven't thought and been able to benefit from that.
I had one other man in that session who said to me that my computer had stopped working. He said, prior to your computer breaking down, this was the first time since I was diagnosed with cancer that I laughed. So yeah, I could go on, but I
wish we could. But before we wrap up, one more time, how can people get in touch with you again so that they can reach out and learn more?
They can go to my website, www.lifecurrents.net, or they can email me at debbie@lifecurrents.net.
I appreciate it. Usually I am telling people that they are, giving information that is informative. People should go research more. I think people here need to experience more, as you said, and really try to ingrain this into their everyday lives and be able to take it. And I'm envisioning myself now going to the grocery store and just suddenly laughing in the middle of the aisle because the prices are so high, as we said earlier, or something like that. But I appreciate you shedding light and sharing these insights, because it's not something that people are familiar with, but has so many benefits, even as you said, just in a short period of time. So I encourage everybody, please do reach out to Debbie. You can go to Debbie Friend's website. It is lifecurrents.net. And also, if you need to reach out and to me, my website is lifecycle.financial. I am the host of the Financial Wellness Hour. I appreciate you listening. Please reach out to all of us. And Debbie, thank you. CC Schatz behind the scenes, my producer, thank you as well for doing all that you do to make it so easy to just have a fun conversation. Have a great week. Debbie, I'd love to have you back, and we'll speak soon. Thank you.